The morning felt almost unreal. Sunlight spilled through the stained glass windows of St. Ilara's chapel, casting soft colors over the white satin of Isla's gown. The faint tang of the sea drifted in from the harbor, mingling with the scent of fresh roses that lined the aisle. I adjusted the lace veil across her shoulders, my fingers lingering for a moment on the delicate fabric that had been in our family for 3 generations. "You look like your grandmother did on her wedding day," I told her, my voice softer than I intended. Isla smiled in the mirror, her eyes bright but brimming with nerves. The room was a whirl of quiet movements, hairpins clicking into place, makeup brushes sweeping over skin, the murmur of the photographer's voice as she arranged a few pre-ceremony shots. My phone buzzed in my clutch, and I excused myself, stepping into the side hallway to answer. The air there was cooler, quieter. I lifted the phone, but before I could speak, a low laugh drifted from further down the corridor. It was the kind of laugh I'd heard many times these past months, confident, practiced. "Ethan." I froze, the phone still in my hand. Another male voice, deeper, rougher, answered him. The best man. I realized. Their words carried just enough for me to catch the rhythm. But I leaned toward the half-open door to hear more. "You're sure this is going to work?" the friend asked. Ethan chuckled again, a sound that felt different now, hollow somehow. "Trust me. She's in love, completely blind to everything else." The words slid into me like ice water. My grip on the phone tightened, knuckles pale. They spoke in quick bursts, like men with a plan too risky to linger on. I stepped closer, careful not to make the old floorboards creak. A fragment, something about after the wedding, floated through the gap in the door, just enough to send my pulse into a strange, uneven rhythm. I stayed still, my ear near the frame, as their voices wove together in low, deliberate tones. "Once I get her to sign off on the paperwork." "It's smooth sailing," Ethan said, his voice carrying with a careless arrogance that made my stomach twist. "Her mother's got property all over the coast, plus a retirement account that could fund a small country. One step at a time, and it's all ours." The best man gave a low whistle. "And Isla. She's not going to suspect," Ethan laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. "She's sweet, naive, thinks I'm her forever. She won't see a thing until I'm done." My nails dug into my palm. The scent of roses from the chapel suddenly felt cloying, suffocating, and the debts the friend pressed. Those Ethan's tone shifted, casual but tight around the edges. "Yeah, I've got them handled. For now. Once I move some assets around, those casino guys will be off my back." "Dangerous." "Sure, but if I don't clear it soon, they'll start making visits. This wedding fixes everything. Dangerous people, casino debts." I pressed myself against the cool plaster wall of the side corridor, fighting the sudden nausea clawing up my throat. Isla's laughter drifted faintly from the bridal suite down the hall light. Trusting, untouched by this ugliness. I wanted to storm in, drag him out by the collar, tell every guest in the pews exactly who he was. But the image of Isla in her gown stopped me. Her face if I shattered her day in front of 200 people. The headlines, the whispers. The door creaked, and I stepped back into shadow as Ethan and his friend walked past, their conversation dropping to a low murmur. I stayed still until the sound of their footsteps faded, my heart thudding like a warning drum. I took a deep breath, forced my shoulders down, and looked at my reflection in the glass of a framed nautical print on the wall. My expression was tight, unreadable. I adjusted it, softened my mouth, let my eyes settle into something resembling calm. When I re-entered the bridal suite, Isla looked up from her chair, cheeks flushed from the makeup artist's brush. Everything okay. Mom. I smiled and touched her shoulder lightly. Perfect. Everything's perfect. Inside. The decision had already been made. I would not ruin her day, not yet. But I would not let Ethan Ward win. The organ's first notes rolled through the chapel. Deep and resonant, and Isla's arms slipped into mine. Her fingers trembled slightly. The way they did when she was a child about to step on stage for a recital, I squeezed her hand, steadying her. My own heartbeat steady, by sheer force of will. The guests rose. A rustle of fabric and whispered admiration. At the far end of the aisle, Ethan stood waiting, polished in his tailored suit, smiling as though he'd just won the lottery, and in his mind, he had. His eyes met mine over the sea of faces. They didn't waver, didn't flicker, as though the words I'd overheard never existed. I walked Isla forward. The scent of roses and polished wood surrounding us. Each step was deliberate, the rhythm almost soothing. When we reached the altar, I placed her hand in Ethan's, watching the brief flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. The officiant's voice carried easily in the stillness. The words about love and trust felt like they were meant to taunt me, each one an echo of what Ethan was willing to counterfeit. I studied him as he recited his vows, shoulders set. Chin lifted, a slight tightening of his jaw on certain phrases. Every tell went into a quiet ledger in my mind. When it was Isla's turn, her voice was soft but sure. She looked at him with that open-hearted devotion that made my chest ache. I stood only feet away, smiling as though I shared her joy, while a different vow formed in my own thoughts. He would not get what he came for. The rings were exchanged, the kiss delivered, and applause rose around us. I clapped with the rest, the sound blending into the joyous noise. To anyone looking, I was simply the proud mother of the bride, welcoming a son-in-law with grace. But beneath that polished surface, the first outlines of my countermove were already taking shape, something that would require patience, precision, and an unshakable mask. As the newlyweds turned to walk back down the aisle, I fell into step behind them, ready to start the performance that would bring him to his own undoing. The reception hall glowed under strings of warm lights, the air buzzing with conversation and the clink of champagne flutes. Isla was radiant, greeting guests with an ease that made my heart swell. I kept near enough to watch her, but my attention stayed fixed on Ethan. He was doing his part, smiling, shaking hands, laughing at the right moments. But there was a current under the charm. Every few minutes, his hand slipped to his jacket pocket, pulling out his phone for a quick glance. His eyes scanned the room like he was expecting someone unwelcome to arrive, while the crowd's focus was on the newlyweds' first toast. I stepped to the side and took out my own phone. My fingers moved quickly, typing a message to Marisol Vega, an old friend from my college days who had spent the last 20 years navigating the maze of financial compliance. Need a discreet background check. Groom's name, Ethan Ward. Urgent. Her reply came faster than I expected. Understood. Will update you as soon as I have something solid. I slipped my phone away and returned to my table, just as two of Ethan's groomsmen, already flushed from the bar, wandered over. They were friendly enough, tossing out compliments about Isla and the reception. But in their casual chatter, pieces began to slip. Man, Ethan's got nerves of steel. One of them laughed. Most guys would be sweating bullets today. Yeah, the other added with a grin. Well, he's had worse pressure. Right. He caught himself too late, shooting his friend a quick look. I tilted my head, feigning polite curiosity. Worse pressure. Oh, just a joke. The first one stammered, waving it off. Work stuff. I smiled faintly, letting them think I believed it. But their exchange had the same sharp edge as the conversation I'd overheard earlier. Something practiced. Something hidden across the room. Ethan laughed loudly at something Isla said, but the sound felt brittle. My phone buzzed again in my pocket. Marisol had sent a short follow-up, already finding red flags. "We'll call you tonight." I lifted my glass, masking the small knot forming in my stomach, and prepared for what I was about to learn. Marisol called just as the band struck up another slow song. I stepped out to the balcony, the cool night air cutting through the heat of the reception. "I've got enough to make your stomach turn," she said without preamble. "Multiple business failures, each one leaves creditors hanging. He's been sued twice for breach of contract. Settled once, lost the other, and the debts. We're talking hundreds of thousands. Not just to banks. Camilla. Some of it's tied to people in illegal betting rings." I gripped the railing, the metal cold against my palms. Dangerous people. The kind who don't send polite reminders. The kind who make examples. Her words landed like stones in my chest. Anything else he's got a pattern. This isn't his first attempt at marrying into money. There were 2 other women, both from wealthy families. One engagement ended abruptly after the father started asking questions. The other called it off when she caught him siphoning money from a joint account. I closed my eyes briefly, picturing Isla in her wedding gown, still dancing with friends inside. My outrage had burned hot for hours, but now it cooled into something sharper, more deliberate. "Thank you, Marisol. Keep this between us." "Of course." "What are you going to do? Make sure he never gets the chance to try this again." Ending the call, I stayed on the balcony a moment longer, letting the sea breeze steady me. Charging in now would only give him a chance to spin the story, to charm his way out. I needed to be certain, airtight, undeniable proof. And I needed to be patient. When I returned inside, Ethan was at the bar, his arm around Isla's shoulders, grinning like a man who believed he'd already won. He glanced my way, all warmth and easy confidence, as if nothing in the world could touch him. I smiled back, letting him see only the part of me he expected, the welcoming mother, the new ally. But behind that smile, the first pieces of a plan began to lock into place, each one designed to lead him exactly where I wanted him to go. I waited until the reception had thinned. When Isla was surrounded by her friends and Ethan was lingering near the dessert table, the music had softened. The crowd's energy mellowed, and it was the perfect moment to approach him without drawing attention. "Ethan," I said lightly, stepping beside him, "you've made quite an impression today. Isla's lucky." He smiled in that polished way of his. "I'm the lucky one. Mrs. Hartwell." "Camilla," I corrected. Tilting my head, I was thinking, "I know you're eager to be part of the family. If you'd like, there might be a way to show us you're serious." His eyebrows lifted just enough to signal interest. "I'm listening." I lowered my voice. "I have a few properties along the coast that I manage myself. Small things, leases, maintenance schedules, vendor payments. It's tedious at times. I could let you handle a few tasks. Consider it a way to earn my trust and get to know how we do things." He tried to hide the spark in his eyes, but I caught it. "That sounds like a great opportunity." "I'd be honored. I'd set up limited account access," I added smoothly, "so you could process small payments. Nothing major. Just enough to see how you handle it." "Of course," he said quickly, leaning in slightly. "I completely understand." I smiled as if pleased by his reasonableness. "We can go over the details after the honeymoon. I'd rather you and Isla enjoy your time first." "Absolutely," he agreed, though I could almost hear the calculations spinning in his head. Back inside, Isla waved at us from across the room. Oblivious to the quiet exchange, Ethan excused himself to join her, and I watched him slip seamlessly back into the role of devoted husband. In reality, the line had been cast, the bait placed perfectly. All that was left was to wait for the moment when his hunger outpaced his caution, and he took the step that would seal his fate. I didn't need to confront Ethan directly to make him squirm. Marisol knew exactly who to call. Within days, the quiet hum of wedding bliss began to fray. It started small, Ethan glancing at his phone more often, disappearing into the hall during family dinners, returning with a strained smile. Then came the restless tapping of his foot under the table, the way his gaze would drift during conversations, as if scanning an invisible clock. By the second week, the charm that had once seemed effortless was beginning to crack. He snapped at a waiter in a restaurant when the bill took too long. He paced our living room while waiting for Isla to get ready, muttering under his breath. I caught him staring at the unopened envelopes on my desk as though they were gold bars. One evening, after Isla left to visit a friend, he lingered in the kitchen doorway. "Camilla?" he began, his tone casual, but his eyes sharp. "I've been thinking about that property management help you mentioned. Maybe we could expand on it a little. Give me access to a broader range of accounts just to make things smoother. I've got some business opportunities lined up, and timing is everything." I pretended to hesitate, setting my wine glass down with care. "That's a big step. Ethan, we've only just started this arrangement." "I know," he said quickly, "but this could really benefit the family. I'd hate for us to miss out because I couldn't move fast enough." I studied him, letting a pause stretch just long enough to feel like consideration. "I'll think about it," I said finally, as if the idea hadn't already been measured and marked for my advantage. He smiled, but it was a tight smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. The next day, Marisol confirmed my suspicion creditors had been calling him, reminding him exactly how many days he had left. His clock was ticking loudly now, and the sound of it was pushing him toward the edge. All I had to do was keep him believing I was slowly, reluctantly, lowering my guard. The rest would take care of itself. It was nearly midnight when I padded into the kitchen for a glass of water. The glow from the den caught my eye, a soft rectangle of light spilling onto the hallway floor. Ethan's laptop sat open on the desk, the faint hum of the fan filling the quiet. Curiosity tugged at me, but when I stepped closer, my pulse quickened. The screen displayed a browser tab open to transfer protocols for corporate accounts, specific instructions for moving funds between linked entities. Multiple tabs showed bank login portals, spreadsheets with projected amounts, and notes about account routing numbers. My hands moved without hesitation. I pulled my phone from my pocket, switched to silent mode, and began taking photo after photo. Every spreadsheet, every list of accounts, every highlighted section of text was captured. The cursor blinked in an email draft addressed to a name I didn't recognize. Subject line: potential fund movement. When I'd documented everything, I stepped back, scanning the room to ensure nothing looked disturbed. The weight in my chest was part dread, part grim satisfaction. It was solid evidence of intent, but still only intent. Without an actual transaction, it could be explained away as research or preparation. I needed more. I needed him to cross the line where no amount of charm or excuses could save him. I sent the photos to Marisol with a brief message. "Got this tonight. Strong, but not final. We need the act itself." Her reply came seconds later. "Understood. He won't be able to deny this once he moves the money." I closed the laptop just enough to dim the screen, but left it exactly as I'd found it, resisting the urge to slam it shut. Upstairs, the sound of the shower running told me Ethan was still in the bathroom. I returned to my room, slid my phone under the pillow, and lay still, the images replaying in my mind. In the morning, I would see him at breakfast, smiling as if he wasn't already planning the theft, and I would smile back, because the trap was almost ready to snap shut. Over coffee the next morning, I set the final move in motion. "Ethan," I began, sliding my phone across the table as if it were a casual update. "My lawyer looked over our arrangement. She thinks it would be smart to move a larger sum now to streamline operations. That way you can manage some immediate expenses without delays." His eyes lit up instantly. "Really? She's on board?" I nodded. "She's preparing the authorization as we speak. It's straightforward. You'll transfer it from the business account you already have limited access to. My father's fine with it, as long as it's handled quickly." He didn't even hide his relief. "I can do it this afternoon, by 2 o'clock. He was seated at my father's office desk, typing with the confidence of someone who believed the prize was in his hands. From a nearby conference room, Marisol monitored the transaction alongside 2 plainclothes officers and our family attorney. The numbers appeared on the screen, 6 figures, directed into his personal account. His cursor hovered for a beat, then clicked. "Confirm. Transfer complete," he murmured to himself, leaning back with a satisfied sigh. Less than an hour later, the officers entered the building. Ethan barely had time to stand before they identified themselves and presented the warrant. His expression shifted from confusion to outrage, then to a cold realization as they explained the charges: fraud, abuse of fiduciary power, attempted embezzlement. From the hallway, I watched him being led out in handcuffs. His polished mask shattered. There was no performance left in him now, only the face of a man who'd gambled everything and lost. I stepped aside, letting the door close behind them, and braced myself for the conversation I knew was coming with Isla. The weeks that followed moved in steady, deliberate strokes. Isla filed for an annulment the day after Ethan's bail hearing. By the second week, more women had stepped forward, each with their own story of promises, debts, and vanished money. The case against him grew thicker with every sworn statement. I kept my distance from the court proceedings, letting our attorney and the prosecutors build their wall of evidence. Marisol kept me updated in short. Clipped calls every new victim, every bank record recovered, every email that confirmed his pattern. One afternoon, Isla arrived at my house with the papers finalizing the annulment. She looked tired, but lighter, as if the last piece of the weight had finally slid off her shoulders. We sat on the porch, the late sun spilling gold over the water. She held my hand. "I know you were protecting me from the moment you heard something was wrong. I don't know how to thank you for that." "You don't need to," I said quietly. "You're safe. That's all that matters." She smiled, small but real, and leaned against me. I poured 2 glasses of wine, handing one to her and lifting mine toward the horizon. The gulls wheeled low over the surf, and the tide whispered against the rocks. It struck me how different this ending could have been if I'd chosen a public confrontation instead of patience. Strategy had given us proof. Proof had given us freedom. Somewhere across the city, Ethan was sitting in a cell, facing years behind bars. He hadn't seen it coming until the moment the handcuffs closed. That was the part I'd keep to myself, the knowledge that I'd outplayed him on his own stage, and I would do it again if I had to.